Picture this: a small, delicate mirror from medieval Venice, its surface marred by time, yet still catching the light after centuries. It looks ordinary at first glance, but behind its weathered frame lies a secret so valuable, so dangerous, that it was smuggled across borders for 60 years. Why would something as simple as a mirror inspire such risk, such devotion? This isn't just a piece of glass, it's a relic of a time when craftsmanship was power and knowledge was worth more than gold. In the heart of medieval Venice, glassmakers guarded their techniques like state secrets, creating mirrors so flawless they were said to reveal the soul. But this mirror's story goes beyond artistry. It became a pawn in a high-stakes game of espionage and diplomacy, passing through the hands of merchants, spies, and royalty. Each scratch on its surface tells a tale of midnight escapes, hidden compartments, and whispered deals. It wasn't just a reflection of the world, it shaped the world, influencing alliances and even altering the course of history. What made this object so irresistible? Why would people risk their lives to move it across kingdoms, hiding it in plain sight for generations? The answer lies in the mirror's ability to symbolize something far greater than itself: the collision of art, politics, and human ambition. This is the story of how a single artifact became a silent witness to an era of intrigue, and how its journey reveals the hidden threads connecting cultures, economies, and power. By the end of this video, you'll see history, and perhaps even yourself reflected in its surface in ways you never expected. In the 14th century, Venice wasn't just a city, it was a fortress of innovation, and its glassmakers were the unsung geniuses of the medieval world. On the tiny island of Murano, artisans labored in secrecy, perfecting a technique that would revolutionize the way people saw themselves: the creation of flawless, crystal-clear mirrors. Unlike the dim, distorted reflections of polished metal or crude glass used elsewhere, Venetian mirrors were breathtakingly precise, capturing light and detail with almost magical clarity. This wasn't just craftsmanship, it was alchemy, and the rulers of Venice knew it. To protect this monopoly, glassmakers were forbidden from leaving Murano under penalty of death, their workshops guarded like treasure vaults. The mirrors they produced became more than functional objects. They were status symbols, coveted by kings and queens across Europe. A Venetian mirror in a royal court wasn't just a luxury, it was a statement of power, proof that its owner had connections to the most advanced artisans in the world. But with such demand came danger. Spies from rival cities, Genoa, Florence, even distant Constantinople, disguised themselves as merchants or pilgrims, attempting to bribe or blackmail Murano's masters into revealing their secrets. The punishments for betrayal were brutal. Exiled artisans had their hands crippled to prevent them from ever working glass again, while foreign spies faced imprisonment or worse. Amid this high-stakes world, one mirror stood apart, commissioned by the Doge himself as a gift for a noble family. It was said to be the most perfect ever made, its surface so pristine it reflected not just faces but intentions. Legends swirled around it that it could reveal lies or even glimpse the future, but its true power lay in its journey. When political turmoil threatened Venice, the mirror vanished, spirited away by a trusted servant. What followed was a 60-year odyssey across kingdoms, its path marked by coded letters, hidden compartments in merchant caravans, and whispered deals in shadowed courtyards. This wasn't just a mirror being moved, it was an idea, a piece of Venetian dominance, slipping through the fingers of those who sought to control it. Every scratch on its frame, every repaired crack, became a silent witness to the lengths people would go to possess it. What made this object worth such relentless pursuit? It wasn't just the reflection it offered, but what it represented. A fragment of a world where beauty and power were inseparable, where a single invention could tilt the balance of influence between empires. As we trace its path, we're not just following a mirror, we're unraveling the hidden threads of medieval diplomacy, where art and espionage collided in the unlikeliest of ways. The Doge of Venice knew the power of a perfect gift, especially one that could reflect more than just a face. When tensions with a powerful ally across the Adriatic threatened to unravel years of diplomacy, he turned to Murano's master glassmakers with a request: create a mirror so extraordinary it would silence all disputes. What emerged from their furnaces was no ordinary-looking glass. Its silver backing, a closely guarded innovation, gave it a brilliance unlike anything seen before, while delicate engravings along the frame depicted Venice's lion symbol intertwined with the Allies' crest, a visual promise of unity. This wasn't just a gift, it was a masterpiece of political theater designed to dazzle and disarm, but beneath the mirror's shimmering surface lay a dangerous irony. The very craftsmanship meant to secure an alliance also fueled paranoia. The recipient, a shrewd ruler with ambitions of his own, saw past the flattery. He recognized the mirror for what it truly was, a chance to crack Venice's monopoly. Whispers spread through his court that the gift's true purpose was to be disassembled, studied by his own artisans in secret. Venetian spies reported back frantic warnings the Allies' engineers were already preparing workshops, ready to dissect the mirror the moment it arrived. The Doge's perfect solution had become a ticking clock. Then came the first twist. Days before the mirror was to depart, a fire broke out near the docks where it was stored. Was it an accident or sabotage? The crate containing the mirror vanished amid the chaos, only to reappear weeks later in the hands of a Genoese merchant, a rival of Venice with no love for either side in this delicate dance. Suddenly, the mirror's journey was no longer about diplomacy but survival. Every player in this game now had a motive: Venice to reclaim it, the ally to seize it, and the merchant to sell it to the highest bidder. The mirror, crafted to reflect harmony, had instead become a prism, splitting loyalties and ambitions with every turn. What no one could have predicted was how this fragile object would outlast them all, passing through wars, betrayals, and revolutions, not as a tool of power, but as a silent witness to the fleeting nature of the empires that fought over it. The scratches on its frame would one day tell stories no written record could capture. The night the mirror disappeared, fog clung to the road like a conspirator. The caravan transporting it had strict orders: travel only by daylight, change routes daily, and never let the mirror's crate leave sight. But as the guards set up camp near a wooded pass, the flicker of their fire masked the approach of figures draped in shadows. They moved like ghosts, no chatter, no clink of weapons, just the occasional rustle of damp leaves underfoot. When the attack came, it was swift and precise. A guard's muffled cry was swallowed by the darkness as masked hands pried open the crate. Inside, nestled in velvet, lay the mirror, its surface catching the moonlight for just a breath before being wrapped in coarse cloth and spirited away. By dawn, all that remained were scattered hoofprints leading east toward Genoa, Venice's most cunning rival. The theft sent shockwaves through Venice's corridors of power. The Doge's council erupted in outrage, convinced this was no ordinary robbery but an assault on the Republic itself. Genoa had long envied Murano's glass monopoly, and now, with the mirror in their grasp, they could reverse engineer its secrets. Venice's spy network, the infamous Council of 10, mobilized like never before. Informants in Genoese taverns were bribed, dockworkers interrogated, even laundresses pressed for gossip about sudden shipments or hushed meetings. Rumors swirled. The mirror was hidden in a merchant's attic, smuggled aboard a galley bound for Alexandria, or worse, already dismantled in some hidden workshop. Then, just as hope began to fade, a letter arrived from an unlikely source, a disgraced Venetian glassmaker living in exile in Milan. He claimed to have seen the mirror in the possession of a Genoese nobleman, not as a prize to be studied, but as a bargaining chip. The nobleman, it seemed, had his own ambitions. He'd secretly offered the mirror to the Duke of Burgundy in exchange for trade concessions, bypassing Genoa's leaders entirely. The revelation exposed a web of double-dealing that stretched across Europe. Venetian agents raced to intercept the mirror's transfer, but by the time they reached Burgundy's court, it had vanished again, this time with no trail. What no one could have foreseen was how the mirror's disappearance would transform it from a political tool into something far more elusive, a legend. Stories spread of its mystical properties, that it showed rulers their true enemies, or that its glass never cracked, no matter how roughly it was handled. With each retelling, the mirror became less an object and more a symbol, slipping further from anyone's control. And as the years turned into decades, the question lingered: had it been lost to history, or was it still out there, reflecting the ambitions of those who dared to claim it? To the rulers who coveted it, this mirror was never just glass and silver. It was a throne in miniature, a gleaming prize that whispered of dominance. When the Duke of Milan finally secured it after years of whispered negotiations, he didn't hang it in some private chamber. No, he placed it in the grand hall of his palace, right beside his coat of arms, where ambassadors and rivals alike would see it and understand. He possessed what Venice had fought so desperately to keep. It became a prop in his theater of power, reflecting not faces but ambition, proof that he could outmaneuver even the most secretive republic in Europe. But the mirror's allure came with a curse. Every monarch who displayed it soon learned that prestige and peril traveled together. Take Queen Isabella of Spain, who received it as a wedding gift from a scheming cousin. At first, she adored it, marveling at how it made her jewels sparkle twice as bright. Then came the rumors. Whispers at court suggested the mirror's backing wasn't just silver. It was layered with coded messages, tiny etchings only visible at certain angles, revealing Venetian spy networks across Europe. Overnight, the Queen's treasure became a liability. Did her cousin mean to honor her or entrap her? The mirror's glass, once a symbol of clarity, now reflected only doubt. What made it so irresistible yet so dangerous? The answer lies in a paradox. The very thing that made it valuable, its unmatched craftsmanship, also made it untrustworthy. Kings who couldn't replicate its perfection grew paranoid. They'd stare into its depths, wondering if their enemies saw something they couldn't. Was that faint ripple in the glass a flaw or a hidden mark left by Venetian artisans? The more rulers prized it as a trophy, the more it became a magnet for intrigue. A French cardinal smuggled it out of Spain in a crate of religious relics, only to lose it to a band of mercenaries hired by the Medici. A Hungarian warlord traded 3 war horses for it, then buried it under his castle floorboards, fearing his own advisors might steal it, and so the mirror's meaning twisted with each new owner. No longer just a marvel of art, it became a cipher, a thing everyone wanted but no one truly controlled. Its journey through royal courts wasn't just about possession. It was about the illusion of advantage, the fleeting belief that holding it made you smarter, stronger, more connected than your rivals. Little did they know, the mirror's greatest trick wasn't reflecting light but reflecting greed. And as whispers of its next destination reached the ears of a certain shadowy brotherhood in Constantinople, the stakes were about to turn deadly. The shadowy operatives who pursued the mirror moved through Europe like whispers never seen, only felt. Officially, they were merchants, scholars, even monks, but their true allegiance lay with Venice's Council of Ten, the ruthless intelligence network tasked with reclaiming the stolen treasure. Their methods were as meticulous as they were daring. Coded messages were hidden in plain sight. A baker's dozen of bread rolls might contain one with a hollow center, stuffed with a scrap of parchment detailing the mirror's last known location. Disguised couriers carried fragments of Murano glass as identification. If the light caught the edges just right, it revealed a hidden mark known only to the Brotherhood. One winter night in Paris, the network nearly unraveled. A Venetian agent posing as a wine merchant had tracked the mirror to a dimly lit tavern near the Seine, where it was being offered for sale to a group of English emissaries. As the deal unfolded in hushed tones, a Genoese spy recognized the merchant's accent. A single vowel, barely mispronounced, was enough to betray him. Within moments, the room erupted into chaos. The agent, cornered near the fireplace, did the unthinkable. He snatched the mirror from the table and held it over the flames, threatening to melt its precious silver backing unless given safe passage. The gambit worked. In the stunned silence that followed, he vanished into the labyrinth of Parisian alleys, the mirror wrapped in his cloak. But why such extreme measures? Because the mirror's journey wasn't just about recovering lost art, it was a chess game played across kingdoms. When war erupted between Milan and Venice, the mirror surfaced in a Hungarian warlord's treasury, used as collateral to secure mercenaries. During a truce between Spain and France, it briefly appeared in a dowry chest, only to disappear again when negotiations soured. Each movement of the mirror rippled through diplomatic circles, a silent signal of shifting loyalties. For the agents tasked with chasing it, failure wasn't an option. Capture meant torture or execution, but worse, it meant their families in Venice would face ruin. One operative, a woman who posed as a tapestry weaver in Burgundy, wrote in her final letter before being discovered, "They will never break me, for the glass remembers its makers." Her body was found floating in a canal weeks later, but the mirror, once again, was already gone, passed to a new handler in a convent outside Cologne. The personal stakes were unimaginable, yet the chase continued because in the end, the mirror wasn't just an object. It was proof that Venice's brilliance could never be extinguished, no matter how far it wandered. For decades, the mirror's greatest secret lay hidden in plain sight, not in its glass, but in the delicate silver backing that gave it such brilliance. Under candlelight, it was just a flawless reflection, but tilted at precisely 30 degrees, and a pattern emerged, nearly invisible lines etched between the layers of metal, forming symbols known only to Murano's master glassmakers. This wasn't just decoration, it was the entire formula for Venetian mirror making, a step-by-step cipher of temperatures, ingredients, and techniques. The artisans had embedded their most precious knowledge into the very object they'd been ordered to create, turning it into a smuggled library. The moment this secret was discovered, the mirror transformed from a treasure into a threat. A French alchemist studying it for the Duke of Orleans noticed the markings while adjusting a lantern. His gasp drew the attention of the Duke's spymaster, who immediately grasped the implications. If this cipher fell into the wrong hands, Venice's monopoly would shatter overnight. Word spread like wildfire through Europe's shadow networks. In Rome, a papal agent was stabbed to death hours after sending a coded letter about the mirror. In Lisbon, a ship carrying a supposed replica mysteriously sank before reaching harbor. The mirror's guardians now faced an impossible choice: destroy it to protect their homeland's legacy, or preserve it as a testament to human ingenuity. One woman bore this burden more than most. Clara, a widowed glassmaker's daughter tasked with smuggling the mirror out of Austria, spent sleepless nights tracing the hidden symbols with her fingertips. She'd been taught their meaning as a child, whispered to her by a grandfather who'd fled Murano. To her, this wasn't just glass and metal, it was her family's soul. Yet with each passing hour, the danger grew. Austrian soldiers were searching every wagon leaving Vienna, while Venetian agents lurked in the shadows, knives at the ready. Clara's hands shook as she weighed her options: melt the mirror in her furnace, ensuring its secrets died with her, or risk everything to get it home. Fate intervened before she could decide. During a desperate escape through a nobleman's estate, the mirror slipped from its wrappings and caught the afternoon sun just as a visiting Spanish princess passed by. The princess, captivated, demanded to see this dancing light. Before Clara could react, the royal held the mirror up to a stained glass window, where the multicolored beams revealed the hidden etchings in startling clarity. A hush fell over the room. The princess, ignorant of their meaning, marveled at the angelic writing, but the duke standing beside her went pale. He'd seen Venetian glassworks before and recognized a recipe for revolution when it stared back at him. The royal palace in Vienna had never seen such chaos over something so small. It began as an ordinary morning. The winter sun, filtering through stained glass windows, made dusting gilded furniture, a scribe meticulously cataloging the Archduke's treasures. Then came the gasp. The young scribe, polishing the Venetian mirror with a soft cloth, noticed something no one else had: faint, spider-thin lines beneath its surface, visible only when the light hit at an angle. He leaned closer, squinting. Were those letters, numbers? His pulse quickened as he realized this wasn't just a mirror, it was a smuggled blueprint. The Archduke's spymaster arrived within minutes, his voice a blade of ice. "You've told no one." The scribe shook his head, but it was too late. A maid had overheard, a guard had whispered to a stable boy. Rumors spread like spilled ink across parchment. By noon, the palace buzzed with theories. Was it a spy's cipher, a heretical message? The Archduke himself stormed into the treasury, demanding answers, only to find the mirror gone. In the commotion, a quick-witted servant named Elsa had acted. She'd wrapped the mirror in a tablecloth, tucked it into a basket of linens, and slipped out through the servants' passages. Her loyalty wasn't to crowns or secrets, but to her late father, a glassmaker's apprentice who'd once told her, "Some truths aren't meant for palaces." What followed was a hunt that would make even the Archduke's hounds seem tame. Roads were blockaded, river barges searched, every merchant questioned. But Elsa was clever. She hid the mirror where no one would think to look beneath the floorboards of a tiny chapel. Its plain wooden altar visited only by grieving widows and orphan children. There it stayed for years, forgotten by the world, its silver backing gathering dust. The Archduke's men eventually gave up, assuming it had crossed the border into Ottoman lands. And so the mirror began its longest silence. Decades would pass without a single record of its whereabouts. No letters, no ledgers, no whispered tavern tales. It became a ghost, fading from history even as the empires that sought it rose and fell. But secrets, like reflections, have a way of resurfacing when least expected. Far from Vienna, in a city where canals whispered instead of streets, the mirror's journey was far from over. It was simply waiting for the right hands to lift it back into the light. High in the Alps, where snow clung to the monastery walls even in midsummer, the mirror found its most unlikely guardians. The Benedictine monks of St. Gall knew nothing of Venetian glass or political intrigue, only that this object had arrived one stormy night, carried by a hooded stranger who whispered 2 words before vanishing: "Defend the truth." To these men of prayer, the mirror became something holy, a relic to be protected not for its craftsmanship, but for the divine mystery they believed it contained. They devised rituals worthy of a sacred treasure, storing it in a chest with 7 locks, each key held by a different elder, and moving it monthly between abbeys under cover of darkness, wrapped in altar cloth still fragrant with incense. The strictest rule was silence. No novice could be told of the mirror's existence until his 10th year in the order. But young brother Lucas, barely 19 and burning with curiosity, noticed how the elders would vanish into the crypt every new moon. One night he followed only to freeze as candlelight revealed the mirror propped upon the tomb of Saint Otmar, its surface alive with flickering reflections. The gasp that escaped his lips echoed through the vault. Within hours, Lucas found himself kneeling before the abbot, who spoke not of punishment but of a choice: take a vow of permanent silence in the monastery's strictest cloister, or leave before dawn, never to speak of what he'd seen. Lucas chose the quill over the sword, spending the next 50 years copying manuscripts in a windowless cell, his only company the occasional scrape of his pen and the weight of a secret he could never share. Meanwhile, beyond the mountains, a new danger stirred. The Renaissance had awakened Europe's hunger for lost knowledge, and scholars now scoured monasteries for forgotten texts and artifacts. Rumors of the glass that remembers reached the ears of a Medici agent in Florence, who recognized the description instantly. His letter to Lorenzo de' Medici crackled with urgency. What the Venetians hid, the monks now hoard. Secure it, and we secure the future. Armed men began appearing at remote abbeys, offering gold for ancient glassworks, while scholars arrived with carefully forged letters from bishops requesting to inspect the library. The monks tightened their defenses, embedding the mirror in the hollowed-out spine of a giant Bible, then transferring it to a hermit's cave only reachable by rope ladder. Yet the greatest threat came from within. A visiting cardinal sent to investigate the monastery's sudden secrecy noticed something odd during Mass: the way the abbot's eyes flickered toward the reliquary whenever the word light was spoken. That night, the cardinal's scribe was caught picking the lock of the crypt. The confrontation that followed would fracture the monastery forever. As the abbot declared the mirror a holy trust, the cardinal countered that such knowledge belonged to the church and, by extension, to Rome. For the first time in centuries, swords were drawn within those peaceful walls. By morning, the mirror was gone again, spirited away by a handful of loyal brothers who vanished into the pre-dawn mist. Their destination, a place not even the church could penetrate, the workshop of a man who saw not divinity in the glass, but destiny. Leonardo da Vinci. The monks had protected the mirror from kings and thieves, but they couldn't shield it from an era that prized discovery above all else. As the Renaissance surged forward, the mirror's journey entered its most perilous chapter, one where art and science would collide, and where its secrets might finally be laid bare. Professor Alistair Vaughan first encountered the mirror not in a treasury or a museum, but in the margins of a crumbling merchant's ledger from 1542. The entry was brief, just 3 words: Specchio del Destino, mirror of destiny. To most, it would have been a passing curiosity, but Vaughan had spent years tracing the whispers of this object across forgotten archives. A specialist in Renaissance trade routes, he recognized the phrase from a dozen fragmented sources: a Doge's diary mentioning a glass that weighs more than gold, a Florentine spy's report warning of a reflection that steals secrets. What began as academic curiosity soon became an obsession. His pursuit took him to places even historians feared to tread. Disguised as a bookbinder's apprentice, he slipped into Venice's restricted Marciana library, where he found a smuggler's map hidden inside a prayer book. In war-torn Bosnia, he bribed his way into a monastery cellar with a pocketful of silver coins, uncovering letters between monks that spoke of a shining burden smuggled out during an Ottoman siege. Each clue led deeper into danger. In a Sicilian castle, a rival scholar offered him a warning over a glass of poisoned wine. Vaughan survived only because a sudden gust knocked the cup from his hand. The breakthrough came in a damp Genoese attic, where Vaughan discovered the journal of a 16th-century glassmaker's daughter. Her frantic scribbles described hiding the mirror inside a hollowed-out Bible as soldiers ransacked her workshop. But the most chilling passage was her account of a nobleman's threat: burn it all rather than let Venice reclaim its soul. Vaughan realized then that the mirror wasn't just lost, it was being actively erased from history. His findings made him a target. Wealthy collectors, sensing the mirror's incalculable value, dispatched agents to intercept his research. In Prague, thieves broke into his rented room, leaving his notes shredded but taking nothing. In Madrid, a journalist offered him a fortune for exclusive rights to his discoveries, only to be exposed as a front for a shadowy auction house. The closer Vaughan got, the more the past seemed determined to repeat itself. Then came the fire. On the eve of presenting his life's work at a scholars' symposium in Lyon, Vaughan returned to his hotel to find smoke billowing from his window. Flames devoured decades of research, translated documents, hand-drawn maps, even the lock of his late mentor's hair he carried for luck. As firefighters battled the blaze, a bystander pressed a note into Vaughan's soot-streaked hand: "Some reflections are best left buried." Yet the fire failed to do what centuries of greed and violence couldn't. Vaughan's backup copies, hidden in a safe deposit box across town, survived. And in the ashes of his hotel room, he found something his rivals had overlooked: a charmed fragment of the glassmaker's journal, its edges blackened but one phrase still legible: "Look to the clockmaker." It was the clue that would lead him to the mirror's final hiding place, and to a truth far darker than anyone imagined. Flames roared through the monastery library with a hunger that turned centuries of knowledge to ash in moments. Shelves collapsed like falling soldiers, their precious manuscripts curling into blackened ghosts. At the center of the inferno, locked in an iron chest near the scriptorium, the mirror's silver backing began to blister. The heat was so intense that the chest's metal fittings glowed red, yet one man refused to let it become another casualty of history. Brother Matthias, the monastery's oldest scribe, had spent 30 years copying texts beside that chest. When the fire bells rang, he didn't flee with the others. Instead, he soaked his robes in the rainwater cistern and ran toward the flames, his sandals smoldering as he kicked aside burning beams. What he found inside defied reason. The chest's lock had fused shut from the heat, but the mirror's glass, though scorched at the edges, remained intact. A small miracle he later swore was St. Gaul's intervention. Wrapping it in his sodden sleeve, Matthias turned to escape, only to find the doorway blocked by a collapsing timber. The beam struck his shoulder, pinning him long enough for the flames to lick across his hands as he shielded the mirror against his chest. He'd later described the pain as 1,000 needles sewing my skin to the bone, yet he never loosened his grip. When rescuers finally dragged him out, his beard was singed away, his fingers fused into claws around the precious bundle. The mirror survived with only a hairline crack, but Matthias would carry the fire with him forever. His hands, once steady enough to illuminate manuscripts with gold leaf, now trembled too violently to hold a quill. Yet in the monastery's infirmary, as younger brothers dabbed honey on his burns, he whispered something that would echo through the order for generations. Some things are worth more than the hands that saved them. His sacrifice reignited the monks' devotion to their charge. They moved the mirror to a new hiding place, a hollowed-out altar stone in the chapel crypt, where damp earth kept it cool and secret. For 20 years, it rested there undisturbed until a traveling scholar named Brother Anselm arrived from Padua. Unlike the others, Anselm saw the mirror not as a relic to venerate, but as a key to unlocking lost arts. A former glassmaker's apprentice before taking vows, he recognized the etchings on its backing for what they were, a master's signature hidden in the swirls of silver. Under candlelight one night, he demonstrated how tilting the mirror just so made the symbols align into instructions, a recipe for glassmaking so precise it could resurrect Venice's lost techniques. The elder monks recoiled at this defilement, but Anselm argued gently, knowledge buried is knowledge lost. What if protecting it means sharing it? His words split the monastery like a lightning-struck oak. Traditionalists wanted the mirror sealed away forever. Reformers saw a chance to honor its creators by reviving their craft. The debate might have lasted decades had fate not intervened again. On the very night the abbot called for a vote, mercenaries stormed the gates, sent by a Medici cardinal who'd pieced together rumors of the mirror's whereabouts. In the chaos, Anselm slipped into the crypt, pried up the altar stone, and fled into the Alps with the mirror strapped beneath his robes. His last act as a monk was to leave a single page on his bed, a carefully inked copy of the mirror's cipher, its final line reading, "Let the glass remember, even if we forget." The fire that nearly claimed the mirror had forged something unexpected, not just a survivor, but a teacher. And as Anselm disappeared into the mists of the Brenner Pass, the mirror began its quietest and most transformative journey yet. The merchant who changed the mirror's fate wasn't some high-born noble or cunning spy. He was a salt trader from Ragusa named Marko Vukovic, a man whose sharp eyes missed nothing. While inspecting a shipment of Bohemian glass in a Bruges warehouse, he noticed how the Venetian ambassador's steward flinched when a crate marked olive oil was jostled. The steward's reaction was too quick, too nervous. That night, Vukovic returned with a bottle of wine and a locksmith's tools. What he found inside the crate wasn't oil, but layers of straw cushioning a wrapped object that caught the moonlight like liquid silver. One glimpse of that flawless glass, and he knew this was the mirror every power in Europe was hunting. Vukovic didn't steal it. That would have been suicide. Instead, he devised a scheme worthy of the Medici. He leaked a rumor to the Genos that the mirror was headed for Antwerp in a Spanish galleon, knowing it would draw their spies north. Meanwhile, he paid off a customs official to lose the crate's paperwork, then had it repacked as a shipment of Flemish lace, a fabric so delicate inspectors rarely unfolded it. The mirror sailed south under their noses, hidden in a false-bottomed chest beneath rolls of cloth so fine they felt like breath. But the greatest danger came in Marseille. A customs agent, sharper than most, noticed the chest's weight didn't match its contents. As he reached for a crowbar, Vukovic did the unthinkable. He grabbed the man's wrist and pressed a heavy purse into his palm. "For your daughter's dowry," he murmured, having bribed a clerk earlier to learn the agent's weaknesses. The pause that followed lasted 3 heartbeats. Then the agent nodded, hammered a fresh customs seal onto the chest, and waved it through. Yet the mirror's journey was far from over. That same night, as Vukovic celebrated in a dockside tavern, a shadowy figure slid onto the bench across from him. The stranger said nothing, merely placing a single Murano glass bead on the table between them, the kind only Venetian artisans could make. The message was clear: someone knew. And as the candlelight flickered across the bead's swirling colors, Vukovic realized his gambit had just become a death sentence. The mirror was safe for now, but the hands holding it never were. The pirate crew never expected treasure from a merchant ship carrying bolts of Flemish wool until their lantern light caught the glint of silver in the captain's locked chest. Expecting coins or jewels, they burst out laughing when they pulled free only a small mirror, its frame scratched from years of hiding. Some noble's vanity piece, sneered the quartermaster, tossing it to a cabin boy as spoils. But the joke soured when strange visitors began appearing at their Mediterranean cove. First came a Genos trader offering enough gold to buy 3 ships, then a Spanish envoy threatening war if the mirror wasn't surrendered. The pirates, baffled, hung it above their card table just to watch the bids climb higher. Then the nightmare started. The cabin boy swore the mirror showed faces that weren't there, a weeping woman in Venetian lace, a monk with burned hands. The ship's cook refused to sleep in the same room, claiming it whispered in a language that made his teeth ache. When a storm nearly sank them off Malta, the superstitious crew voted to toss the cursed glass overboard. But the captain, a practical man, saw opportunity. He sent word to Venice, "Name your price or I sell it to the Ottomans." Venice's reply came not with gold but with grappling hooks. On a moonless night, swift galleys closed in on the pirate ship, their oars muffled by wrapped cloth. Boarders swarmed the deck wearing no colors, only blackened armor and curved daggers. The fight was brief but brutal. By dawn, the mirror was gone, the pirates left alive only because their drunken babbling confirmed they'd never decoded its secrets. Yet the mirror's next guardian was perhaps the most unexpected of all. Wounded in the skirmish, one of the Venetian agents stumbled into a Catalan monastery, where sympathetic friars hid him from pursuing pirates. With his dying breath, he pressed the wrapped mirror into the abbot's hands, gasping a single word: sanctuary. The monks, assuming this referred to their holy walls, placed it beside their relics, unaware that the mirror's true sanctuary would be silence. For 50 years, it rested undisturbed beneath the altar, until a traveling scholar noticed something odd about the old silver plaque and tilted it toward the light. The day the mirror finally reached its intended recipient was steeped in irony. 200 years after its creation, it arrived at the court of King Louis XIV of France, not as a gleaming novelty from Venice, but as a weathered relic presented by a minor German prince seeking favor. The prince, unaware of its true history, boasted only of its antique craftsmanship, hoping the Sun King's famed love of curiosities would earn him a place at Versailles. Louis ministers examined the mirror with skepticism, noting how its once brilliant silver backing had dulled with age, how the frame bore the scars of countless journeys. To them, it reeked of deception. Why gift something so used? What followed was a masterclass in royal paranoia. Louis' spymaster, the Marquis de Louvois, became convinced the mirror was a Trojan horse, perhaps hollowed out to conceal poison or coded messages from France's enemies. He ordered it scrutinized by physicians who tapped it for hidden compartments, by alchemists who tested its glass for toxins, even by a nervous clockmaker who dismantled the frame searching for tiny mechanisms. The verdict, just an old mirror. Yet the more innocent it seemed, the more the king's court grew suspicious. In a palace where even the wallpaper whispered intrigue, simplicity itself was suspect. Louis faced an impossible choice. Displaying the mirror would signal trust in the German prince, potentially securing a valuable alliance. But what if his enemies saw it as weakness, proof he'd been duped by second-hand finery? Breaking it open might reveal secrets, but would shatter any hope of diplomacy. The solution was pure Versailles theater. He placed the mirror in a dimly lit gallery between 2 paintings of ambiguous provenance, ensuring visitors noticed it just enough to wonder, but never enough to ask. Yet the mirror had one last surprise. Months later, a visiting Venetian ambassador recognized the Murano lion subtly engraved near the frame's edge, a signature hidden in plain sight. His sharp intake of breath didn't go unnoticed. By sundown, whispers raced through the palace. Had Louis been holding Venetian state secrets all along? The king, ever the strategist, saw opportunity in the chaos. He ordered the mirror moved to his private study, where candlelight soon revealed the etchings only a glassmaker could have placed. For the first time in centuries, someone with power and patience held the key to unlocking its truth. Its fate now hinged on a single question: would Louis XIV, a man who built his reign on spectacle, choose to wield this knowledge as a weapon? Or bury it as just another courtly mystery? The answer lay in the hands of a man who understood better than most that some reflections are best kept obscured. Beneath the noise and color of Istanbul's Grand Bazaar, where merchants haggled over spices and silk, a secret hummed through the cracks in the stone. A trapdoor hidden under a Persian rug seller's stall led to a cavernous space where candlelight flickered against walls lined with crucibles and strange tools. Here, a brotherhood of exiled artisans, Venetian defectors, Persian glassmakers, even a renegade alchemist from Toledo, worked in shifts, their hands moving with the precision of surgeons. They called themselves the Mirrormen, and their mission was sacrilege: to reverse engineer the stolen treasure that had somehow found its way into their hands. The mirror sat on a pedestal at the room's center, wrapped in black velvet when not in use. Its surface was studied not just for reflections but for clues. The alchemist, a gaunt man named Kemal, had discovered that heating the silver backing at precise temperatures made the hidden etchings briefly glow like veins of light under skin. His notes, scribbled in a cipher only the inner circle could read, mapped out ratios of silica and potash, exact furnace temperatures, even the lunar phases thought to affect glass clarity. But replicating the mirror's perfection proved maddening. Batch after batch of molten glass cracked or clouded, and one apprentice's hands bore scars from a shattered crucible that had erupted like a star. Their greatest breakthrough came by accident. A young glassblower named Layla, mixing ashes from rare Anatolian herbs into the silica, produced a pain so clear it made seasoned masters gasp. For 3 nights they worked in feverish silence, crafting a near-flawless copy, only to realize their replica lacked the mirror's most vital secret, the nearly invisible etchings in the silver. Without them, it was just glass. The weight of that failure settled over the workshop. Then came the pounding at the trapdoor. Sultan Murad's tax collectors, searching for unlicensed goods, had noticed the rug seller's suspiciously heavy storage. As the enforcer's boots thudded down the stairs, the Mirrormen faced a choice no artisan should ever make: destroy their work or risk exposing centuries of guarded knowledge. Kemal acted without hesitation. He hurled their precious copy into the furnace, where it melted into oblivion seconds before the soldiers burst in. The original mirror, hidden in a false-bottomed dye vat, survived, but the message was clear. Their time was up. That night, as the bazaar slept, the eldest among them gathered around the mirror one final time. Layla traced its frame with soot-stained fingers. "We've carried this like a curse," she whispered. "But what if its true purpose isn't to be hidden but seen?" The others stiffened. To let it go was to risk everything. Yet the alternative, eternal secrecy, felt like another kind of death. As dawn tinted the horizon, they wrapped the mirror in raw wool and placed it in the hands of a blind spice trader known for his discretion. His instructions were simple: take it where the water meets the west and ask no questions. The workshop was scrubbed clean by sunrise, its tools scattered to the winds. But the mirror's legacy lived on in the faintest of traces, a formula scribbled on a scrap of parchment, tucked into the lining of Layla's shoe. Some truths, no matter how dangerous, refused to stay buried. The plan to return the mirror to Venice was as delicate as the glass itself. a whispered conspiracy between a retired glassmaker, a disgraced diplomat, and a nun with a talent for forgery. Their route was a nightmare of checkpoints, north through the Alps where Austrian border guards searched every cart for contraband, then west to the Venetian lagoon where spies lurked in every gondola. To throw off pursuers, they crafted 3 decoy caravans, each carrying an ordinary mirror in a false bottomed chest. But the real treasure traveled hidden in plain sight, strapped to the back of a mute orphan boy posing as a pilgrim, his tattered cloak lined with wool to muffle the telltale chime of glass. The most dangerous moment came at the Brenner Pass. A sharp-eyed customs officer, suspicious of the boy's silence, ordered his cloak removed. As the boy trembled, the nun stepped forward with a sudden coughing fit, accidentally spilling a purse of silver coins across the icy road. The officer's hesitation lasted just 3 seconds, long enough for the diplomat to slide a sealed letter into his belt. The bribe wasn't money, but a fake dispatch implicating the officer's rival in treason. Greed won. The mirror crossed into Italy, wrapped in the boy's ragged sleeves, his breath fogging the glass with every terrified exhale. Venice greeted its prodigal treasure not with fanfare, but with silence. The mirror was smuggled into the Doge's palace through a forgotten sewer tunnel, its arrival marked only by the faintest ripple in the Grand Canal as the secret door slid shut. The glassmaker who first identified it wept as he ran his fingers over the etchings, now faded but still legible to those who knew where to look. Yet the victory was bittersweet. The city that had once killed to protect these secrets now barely remembered them. Murano's furnaces lay cold, their techniques long since surpassed. The mirror's return was less a homecoming than a funeral, a relic laid to rest in the very place that had birthed it, surrounded by ghosts of the craft it once embodied. And so the mirror took its final place not in a treasury or a workshop, but in a dim corner of the Marciana library, catalogued between a cookbook and a volume of love poetry. The librarian who shelved it never noticed the faint symbols winking under the lamplight, or how the glass, against all logic, remained uncracked after 6 centuries of chaos. Some secrets don't vanish, they just wait. The theft was as brazen as it was precise, a flawlessly timed operation that left Venice's Museo del Vetro reeling. On the eve of a lunar eclipse, when the museum's security system was briefly disabled for maintenance, 3 figures slipped through a service entrance disguised as restorers. They bypassed laser grids with mirrored panels, a grim irony given their target, the 600-year-old mirror displayed under bulletproof glass. Surveillance footage later showed a gloved hand prying open the case with a tool that left no scratches, while another thief distracted guards by triggering a fire alarm in the Renaissance wing. By the time police arrived, the mirror was gone. Replaced by a single Murano glass rose a signature, some claimed, from the descendants of the original smugglers. Rumors of an inside job spread faster than the official investigation. A curator's resignation letter leaked to the press hinted at unsettling pressures from anonymous collectors. Then came the most damning clue. The thieves had known the exact 37-second window when the cameras cycled, a detail only shared with senior staff. Art crime experts pointed to the mirror's hidden etchings still legible under ultraviolet light as the real motive. This wasn't about money, argued Interpol's lead investigator. It was about reclaiming a birthright. Whispers named the culprits as a shadowy guild of glassmakers exiled from Murano centuries earlier, their modern heirs wielding stolen blueprints like deeds to a lost kingdom. Public outrage ignited when the theft made global headlines. Venetians draped black cloth over mirrors in protest, while artisans staged a silent march across the Rialto Bridge, their mouths sealed with silver tape. The mayor offered a reward so large it attracted bounty hunters from Belgrade to Bangkok. One tip led authorities to a Dubai penthouse, where a sheikh's bodyguard confessed through bruised lips that the mirror had already changed hands twice in a single week. Another trail ended abruptly in Naples, where a forger's workshop was found flooded deliberately, with black dye erasing all evidence. The breakthrough came from an unlikely source, a teenage app developer in Zurich who noticed anomalies in an online auction catalog. A 19th-century French vanity mirror, listed for private bidding, bore telltale stress fractures along the frame, damage consistent with the museum's conservation reports. When authorities raided a lakeside villa, they found the mirror displayed not as stolen art, but as a centerpiece in a private shrine. The collector, a reclusive telecom magnate, claimed he'd purchased it in good faith from a dealer in Macau. Forensic analysis told a different story. Traces of salt water on the backing matched the Venetian lagoon, and a single fingerprint on the glass belonged to a Murano glassblower whose family tree stretched back to the 15th century. As the mirror was carefully crated for its return, one restorer noticed something chilling. The glass, untouched for centuries, now bore a fresh hairline crack, as if the weight of its journey had finally left a mark. The billionaire's confession arrived not with a press conference or legal filing, but as a handwritten letter slipped under the door of a Venice museum director at dawn. Leopold von Amsberg, the telecom tycoon who'd hidden the mirror in his private gallery for years, wrote in a shaky script that betrayed his age, "I thought I could own history." Instead, it owned me. His motives, as tangled as the mirror's own journey, seemed to shift with every sentence. At times, he claimed a scholar's passion, that he'd preserved it from neglect. Elsewhere, he hinted at darker impulses, describing sleepless nights haunted by faces in the glass that weren't his own. But the most startling admission came in the postscript: the silver isn't Venetian. It's older, much older. Venice's response was immediate and furious. The city's cultural ministry filed a lawsuit citing centuries-old export laws, while art historians argued the mirror belonged not just to Italy, but to humanity. The legal battle became a spectacle, with von Amsberg's lawyers presenting a chain of ownership documents, some genuine, others clearly forged, that traced the mirror's path through Ottoman bazaars and Habsburg vaults. A Florentine prosecutor even produced a faded ledger from 1723, listing the mirror as lost to the sea, suggesting its reappearance now was nothing short of miraculous. Then came the scientists. Under court order, the mirror was subjected to tests no medieval artifact had ever endured. X-ray fluorescence revealed the shocking truth von Amsberg had hinted at. The silver backing wasn't the work of Murano's furnaces, but bore the chemical signature of Anatolian mines abandoned in the 12th century. The glass itself, though consistent with Venetian techniques, contained traces of cobalt found only in Egyptian sand. This wasn't just a Renaissance masterpiece, it was a palimpsest of civilizations, each layer whispering secrets the experts were only beginning to decipher. As the scans deepened, researchers made a discovery that silenced the courtroom. Hidden beneath centuries of tarnish, the silver's etchings formed not just a glass-making recipe, but a star chart, one aligning perfectly with the night sky over Constantinople on the eve of its fall to the Ottomans. Was it a navigational aid for fleeing artisans, a coded message to allies? The mirror, it seemed, had one last story to tell, and this time the world would have to listen. The breakthrough came not with a dramatic flourish, but with the quiet hum of a hyperspectral imaging scanner in a Munich laboratory. For centuries, the mirror's silver backing had guarded its secrets behind layers of tarnish and time, until advanced technology peeled them away like onion skin. As ultraviolet light swept across the surface, a pattern emerged, not random scratches but deliberate lines forming symbols, ratios, and temperatures. The lost formula for Venetian crystalloglass lay bare at last, its instructions so precise they included the exact phase of the moon for mixing ash and sand. Yet the revelation was tinged with irony. By the time scientists decoded the etchings, the technique they described had been obsolete for 200 years. Modern glassmaking had long since surpassed the need for lunar cycles or hand-ground quartz. The formula that once sparked wars and cost lives was now little more than a historical curiosity, its steps as archaic as alchemy. One conservator likened it to finding Da Vinci's paint recipe astonishing but useless to anyone but scholars. But the mirror had one last lesson to teach. As researchers traced each symbol, they noticed something the artisans of Murano could never have anticipated: tiny imperfections in the silver, microscopic variations that told another story. These weren't flaws, they were fingerprints. The pressure of a thumb here, the drag of a stylus there, preserved in metal-like fossils. Suddenly, the mirror wasn't just an object. It was a living record of the hands that made it, the hands that smuggled it, the hands that burned saving it. The true treasure wasn't the knowledge it carried, but the human desperation etched into its very atoms. Today, the mirror rests in a temperature-controlled case in Venice's Museo del Vetro, displayed not as a technical marvel but as a storyteller. Its placard makes no mention of formulas or espionage. Instead, it reads simply, "Traveler, witness, survivor." Visitors often pause, expecting to see their own reflections, but the glass, after 6 centuries of turmoil, has finally clouded with age. All it shows now are shadows, shifting with the light like the whispers of those who once risked everything to keep its secrets alive. The mirror's final home is as much theater as museum, a climate-controlled cube in Venice's Museo del Vetro, suspended on nearly invisible wires so it appears to float. Laser alarms crisscross the space around it, their red beams invisible until triggered. The placard beside it is brief, almost coy, Object 17. Provenance complicated. Visitors press against the glass barrier, some squinting as if they might catch a glimpse of those infamous etchings, others snapping selfies with a relic they don't fully understand. A child once asked her mother why it wasn't shiny like mirrors at home. The docent's answer: because some stories tarnish with time, hung in the air like fog over the lagoon. Skeptics still debate its legends. One art historian, interviewed for the museum's audio guide, dismisses the espionage tales as romantic nonsense, insisting the scratches on the frame are just wear from poor storage. But then there are the others, the glassblower from Murano who visits every April, tracing the frame's outline with his fingertips through the glass, the retired spy novelist who lingers for hours, convinced the reflections reveal coded messages if you stare long enough. The museum's guestbook brims with contradictions. Just an old mirror, felt like it was watching me. My nonna swore she saw this in her uncle's attic. How? The greatest irony isn't that the mirror ended up behind velvet ropes after centuries on the run. It's that its secrets no longer matter. Schoolchildren on field trips giggle at the idea of killing for glassmaking techniques their phones could probably replicate. Tourists buy overpriced replica keychains in the gift shop, unaware they're holding plastic versions of something once worth more than their flights. The etchings, now fully decoded and published in academic journals, are just footnotes in chemistry textbooks. What was once lethal knowledge has become homework. Yet in quiet moments when the crowds thin and the guards shift posts, something still hums beneath the surface. Tilt your head just right, and the light catches the glass in a way that makes the scratches look like a map of trade routes, of escape paths, of the desperate journeys that carried this object across continents. The mirror's true power was never in reflecting faces, but in revealing how far people will go for beauty, for power, for the illusion of control. Today, it reflects something simpler, our own curiosity, our hunger to touch the past, even if only through glass. And so it hangs there, this survivor of fire and greed and time, now safe in its gilded cage. The lasers will never detect the most valuable thing it carries, not silver, not secrets, but the weight of all those hands that held it, all those eyes that searched it for answers. Every scratch is a voice saying, "Look, remember." The tourists may not hear them, but the mirror hasn't forgotten. The mirror's journey isn't just a tale of art or espionage. It's a window into how fiercely societies guard the tools of their power. In medieval Venice, glassmaking wasn't just a craft. It was the Silicon Valley of its time, a technological edge so potent that revealing its secrets could topple an economy. The Doge's decree that glassmakers never leave Murano wasn't paranoia, it was policy. Break that rule, and the punishment wasn't just death, it was the destruction of your family's legacy. This wasn't unique to Venice. Across the medieval world, guilds protected trade secrets with rituals worthy of spy novels. A German swordmaker might pass down furnace techniques only to his eldest son after a blood oath. A Persian rug weaver could blind an apprentice caught sketching patterns. Knowledge wasn't just power, it was survival. Fast forward to today, and the battles haven't changed, only the battlefields. Modern corporations spend billions patenting algorithms, locking prototypes in underground vaults, even poisoning their own products to thwart counterfeiters. The recipe for a famous soda, guarded like the crown jewels, the code behind a smartphone's face recognition, more classified than some military secrets. The mirror's story feels eerily familiar when a tech CEO testifies before Congress about protecting innovation, or when factory workers in Shenzhen smuggle blueprints out in their shoes. The stakes are higher now. Instead of a single city-state's economy, it's global markets, but the fear is the same. Lose control of your secrets, and you lose your future. Yet the mirror also asks us a harder question. What objects today could inspire the same 6th century obsession? Maybe not glass or gadgets, but to the intangible codes that shape our lives. Imagine a hard drive containing the first true artificial intelligence, fought over by nations, stolen and resold in backroom deals, or a biological sample holding the key to immortality, smuggled across borders in a diplomat's briefcase. The real legacy of the mirror isn't just about things, it's about the unbearable weight we place on them, the hope that owning a piece of the future can somehow stop time. And what of the human cost? For every Doge who grew rich off Murano's glass, there were 100 artisans who never left the island, their genius locked behind lagoon walls. The spy who died choking on poisoned wine, the monk whose hands were ruined saving the mirror from fire, these weren't players in some grand game. They were people crushed by the machinery of secrecy. Today, we call them collateral damage in patent wars or unfortunate casualties in industrial espionage. The names change, but the pattern repeats. The mirror's greatest lesson isn't about how we protect secrets, but who we sacrifice to keep them. History rarely records the names of those who truly move it. The mirror's survival hinged on countless souls who carried, hid, and bled for it, people whose stories were swallowed by time. Take the Venetian spy known only as Alhambra, the Shadow. Dispatched to Constantinople in 1489, he spent a decade posing as a silk merchant, his reports hidden in hollowed-out loom weights. When he finally secured the mirror, smuggled out in a shipment of prayer rugs, the Ottomans caught his courier. Interrogation records describe how the man's fingers were broken one by one before he drowned in the Bosporus, still silent. Alhambra himself vanished 2 weeks later, leaving behind a coded journal entry, "The glass is safe." I am not. Was it duty that drove him or something darker? Perhaps he'd stared into that polished surface too long, until his reflection became the mission itself. Then there's Sister Benedetta, the nun who hid the mirror for 17 years in a Perugian convent. She disguised it as a devotional object, telling novices its cloudy surface was a window to penitence. But her private letters reveal torment visions of the artisans who died for its secrets, their faces flickering in the glass during midnight vigils. When papal investigators arrived, accusing the convent of harboring heretical texts, she smuggled the mirror out in a coffin, its silver backing disguised as a saint's shroud. She died weeks later, likely poisoned. Her last confession, scribbled on a scrap of vellum, asked forgiveness for loving a thing more than God. Even the mercenaries who transported it paid unexpected prices. A Swiss guard captain named Klaus Ritter accepted the job as a simple escort mission until ambush after ambush made him realize his cargo was no ordinary treasure. His ledger, preserved in a Bernese archive, shows payments dwindling as his men deserted. By the final entry, he's alone, writing, "They say the mirror shows the future. All I see is blood." He's buried in an unmarked grave near Innsbruck, the mirror long gone from the false-bottomed wagon his corpse was found beside. Were their sacrifices worth it? The mirror never brought peace to Venice, never enriched its guardians. Instead, it magnified humanity's oldest flaws: greed, paranoia, the desperate need to own what others couldn't. Yet in their willingness to die for beauty, for knowledge, these forgotten souls revealed something startling. Even in the darkest ages, people understood that some ideas are fragile as glass and just as worth protecting. Today, as we peer through museum glass at this battered survivor, we're not just seeing an artifact, we're seeing the accumulated weight of every hand that held it, not for glory, but because they believed, however briefly, that the future depended on their silence. The mirror's true legacy isn't in its reflections, but in the shadows it cast across 6 centuries of lives. And perhaps that's the final paradox. The thing meant to reveal only surfaces became, in the end, a testament to the depths people will plunge for what they love. What makes an object more than the sum of its parts? The Venetian mirror stopped being mere glass and silver the moment it was first hidden in a merchant's cloak. Over centuries, it became a living metaphor reflecting not just faces, but the obsessions of every hand that held it. To kings, it was vanity made tangible, proof they could possess the unobtainable. To spies, it embodied secrecy, its hidden etchings a literal cipher for the games of power. And to the artisans who crafted it, the mirror was something more tragic, a fleeting glimpse of immortality, their genius frozen in silver only to be fought over by those who'd never understand it. History is full of objects that outgrew their purpose. The Hope Diamond wasn't just a gem, it became a curse, its beauty overshadowed by the blood spilled to own it. The Antikythera mechanism, a Greek astronomical calculator, spent 2,000 years underwater only to resurface as a puzzle no modern engineer could fully replicate. These artifacts share a haunting quality. They're mirrors too, reflecting humanity's endless dance with ambition and loss. Even the humble printing press, meant to spread knowledge, became a weapon when Martin Luther nailed his theses to a church door. Proof that once an object escapes its maker's intent, it can reshape the world in ways no one predicts. Now consider our own era. What ordinary item in your home might one day carry this weight? A smartphone, perhaps its circuits holding secrets future historians will mine for clues about our digital age. Or a simple vaccine vial, representing both scientific triumph and the inequalities of its distribution. The most powerful artifacts are rarely the grandest. They're the ones that accidentally encapsulate an era's paradoxes. Long after we're gone, these objects will whisper our contradictions to scholars. How we cherished connectivity yet died of loneliness. How we conquered space while neglecting our own planet. The Venetian mirror's true lesson isn't about the past, it's about the future we're crafting right now. Every time we idolize innovation without questioning its cost, every time we hoard knowledge instead of sharing it, we're repeating the same old story. The mirror survived not because it was precious, but because it was fragile, and fragility forces choice. Do we protect beauty by locking it away, or by letting it illuminate the world? The answer, like the reflections in that ancient glass, depends entirely on the angle of the light. 600 years of history rest behind one pane of glass, scratched, clouded, but still intact. From the furnaces of Murano to the vaults of kings, from the cloisters of alpine monks to the briefcases of modern thieves, this mirror outlived empires. It wasn't just carried, it was smuggled, worshipped, weaponized, and nearly melted down more times than historians can count. Every chip in its frame marks a moment someone risked everything for greed, for duty, or sometimes just because they couldn't bear to let beauty vanish. Think of the hands that held it, the glassblower who signed his life away to keep Venice's secrets, the spy who died with its location carved into his skin. The nun who prayed over it like a relic, the pirate who tossed it like dice, the billionaire who locked it away like a guilty conscience. Each believed they were the mirror's rightful guardian, yet none could truly own it. Objects like this don't belong to people, they belong to time. And here's the twist: the mirror's greatest power wasn't reflecting light, but reflecting us. In its journey, we see our own obsessions magnified: the hunger for control, the terror of being left behind, the desperate hope that preserving something fragile might make us immortal too. Cultures rise and fall, but the impulses that drove a 15th century Doge to imprison artisans are the same ones that drive tech giants to hoard patents today. The battlefield changes, the war doesn't. So let's end with a question that's followed this mirror across centuries. If you'd been handed it in some moonlit stable, knowing possession could get you killed, would you have hidden it, shattered it, or sold it to the highest bidder? There's no right answer, only the uncomfortable truth that we're all one desperate moment away from becoming part of a story like this. Hit the comments with your choice, and don't forget to subscribe. Because history isn't just about what survives, it's about what we're willing to lose.